I am actually dressed down because I'm not wearing a tie. But I didn't wear my jeans today.
That's funny, actually. Questions? You? Yes, gray shirt.
My question is related to fasting. I think probably a lot of people against fasting in general. You guys touched on that. But I'd like to know your thoughts on protein-sparing modified fast, and what do you think is appropriate, not appropriate, and maybe the benefits of doing that, like the protein intake that?
Did everyone hear that? Okay, so what about fasting? What about the protein-sparing modified fast and all those things? Actually, the low-carb approach generally started as a protein-sparing modified fast. If you look in the literature, there's some papers about it, where basically they just gave protein without any fat. It's important to realize that because that worked really well for weight loss. So you don't have to eat fat to lose fat. I do hear that out there, and I think I said that once, but it was just, or a few times, but it was to get you to not worry about eating fat, because there's a lot of fat phobia. But fasting, I think, is fine, eating less, as long as you're not hungry. So I don't subscribe to the idea that you would consciously ignore hunger to say I'm intermittent fasting, therefore, because it's just not sustainable, and then I don't know. But so my teaching is basically, if you're hungry, eat. If you're not, don't eat. That allows for you to eat 5 times a day, you to eat once a day. And so it's more flexible than prescribing a certain way of eating. And I see the protein-sparing modified fast really just being a way of eating protein mainly, which is what the way we teach a keto kind of diet.
So fasting is very, very powerful. Now I agree with the doctor, it's not that sustainable for many people. But the power of it is such that many people, they start out with keto. And some of us just kind of naturally fall into fasting because they go hand in hand. They're the perfect marriage of a health combination. Some people don't need to fast. Some people just need to eat keto. Other people, the amazing benefits of fasting, it's worth the unsustainability of it. Okay? And so if you have any kind of, there are a long list of medical conditions and just conditions that fasting will help. So forever human beings have not eaten. Okay? 20,000 years ago, and that's kind of my standard thing. Let's go back in time, 20,000 years. And so the reason that fasting is so powerful is because 20,000 years ago, when you weren't eating, that meant what? You were starving to death because you couldn't find any food, right? And so the human body is very wise. Our DNA is ancient. Like there's so much ancient wisdom in your DNA. The human body is not stupid. And Dr. Jason Fung says it very elegantly. Our body's very wise, very intelligent. And so when we would go through a famine, I mean, what would be the best strategy for your body? To get weaker each day that you didn't eat? Would that help you get food? No, because the third, fourth day you can't even get up and get out of the cave and go look for food. So the strategy is that your body starts to renew and regenerate and rebuild. And everybody knows, when you fast, you're going to burn fat. What's that fat locked up in? What holds that fat in place? How come it didn't just slide down into my ankles? Well, what keeps it there? Connective tissue, right? What's that made of? Protein. And so when you're fasting, not only are you burning that fat for fuel, but the collagen and the fibrin tissues are breaking down. And you're reusing that to rebuild other things better than it was. Does that make sense? And so that's one of the many powerful things you get from fasting and using that as a strategy if you need that. The other thing is autophagy, which I'm sure most of you guys have heard of. And that's basically, that's just a kind of a macro version of autophagy, because it can happen within the cell as well. You can start breaking down old mitochondria and using that building material to make new, much more healthy mitochondria. And so the fasting is a powerful, ancient strategy that humans have been using forever to get better, not to get worse. Question? Yes?
I'm just wondering, have you guys gotten any pushback since your book is out? I mean, Dr. Westman, I know you've been doing this a long time, but are you fearful that you would lose your license? Is the climate changing at all towards, people who do ketogenic, low carb, even carnivore now? Or do you feel ostracized by your colleagues? What's the sense of the climate that you're experiencing?
So, is there a danger? Yes. Do I care? No. I think it was on the low carb cruise. Neisha gets nervous every time I say this, but I would please make me the American Tim Noakes. Please make me the American Gary Fettke. Please do that to me. No, I do. Bring it. Let's go. She's like, well, the danger is, so if another physician in my area reported me to the medical board, he's telling people to eat lots of bacon. Then the medical boards are duty bound. Any complaints, whether anonymous or otherwise, they have to investigate that complaint. That's right, exactly right, yeah. And so anytime a doctor gets deemed by the medical board, it can be for something that didn't harm a single patient. Nobody was harmed, nobody was injured, not even a patient complained. And so an anonymous complaint has to be investigated just as thoroughly and quickly as if a patient say, hey, Dr. Berry almost killed me by inappropriate prescribing of whatever. Yeah, right. So the medical board could then, in fact, come back and they could reprimand me or fine me or put me on probation or take my license, depending on what that 5-member board. That's literally all it comes down to. Because having a medical license in America is a privilege. It's not a right. And so a doctor has no due process. I never know who my accuser is. I never get to question them. I can present all the evidence I want to, but it comes down to 3 votes on that 5-member panel. 2 or 3 of which are just regular people, and then 2 or 3 doctors. That's it. And there is no recourse, there is no appeal, there is no Supreme Court, there's nothing. You're done. That's it. And so, yeah, the danger is very real. If somebody on the medical board had a little vendetta against you, the danger is very real. Absolutely. I've been actively promoting keto, low carb, primal paleo for 5-6 years. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
He was very disappointed that it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I got this. Like literally, I was messaging Gary Fettke. I was like, dude, it's happening. It's happening. I'm going to be you. And then I got the letter and they're like, yeah, it's been dismissed. They turned me, well, this lady complained and said that I was preaching keto and that I was making and posting a YouTube video while she was sitting in the room waiting. And she had to wait a really long time. But now here's the other thing about that. That was her complaint, that she had to wait too long. But once there's been a complaint, the medical board is at their liberty to investigate everything and anything. It doesn't even have to, that basically just opens the box. Then they can look for anything they want to look for. And so anything's up for grabs. And so if the medical board had just had the information, they could have said, oh yeah, you're promoting an inappropriate diet not based on any research. You've made people's cholesterol go up, and we're gonna reprimand you or put you on probation, any of that stuff. Yeah. And so that's the danger is there's no due process. They can take my medical license. I have no legal recourse. Nothing. It's 3 votes out of 5. That's it. And that's why it's a big danger, and the politics come into play because there is no, and he's sitting there thinking, he's going, I didn't know that. But, yeah, he did. But I mean, that's the thing is, I have no right to that license. That's granted by the state of Tennessee, and just like any state. And so that's the danger.
Yeah, so it's not a danger. This happens in clinical professional practice no matter what you do. And I've been speaking about 20 years about this. Research, 7 years, clinical care at Duke, now 12 years. And no one has ever turned me in. So as professionals, I know that there's a fear, I don't want to do that, I'm not going to be turned in. Well, you can get turned in for anything, waiting too long in the room. So one-on-one in the U.S., the medical malpractice standard is there has to be some harm. Medical malpractice, yeah, harm. And well, that's what most doctors are worried about, malpractice. I mean, the licensure stuff is I've had to go remediate people for being turned in for just stupid things. I mean, so I just wanted to take away the balance of being a doctor of doctors and being the president and now past president of an organization that teaches this. Not only just not practices it, they teach it. That I don't think there's any danger of your licensing. You might be turned in, but the science is so solid, there's no danger of you being actually, if you get someone to actually look into it. So Annika Dahlqvist in Sweden was turned in, and they did a review, and the review was fair, and they said, oh, she's okay. She wins. So it's interesting. So no patient has ever sued a practitioner because of harm, because everything gets better. I mean, the patients are happy, so someone can be irritated because you look fine. And then that frivolous kind of thing usually just wins its way away. But I can't imagine that a board would be totally unaware of what's going on with keto today. And now with the internet, because you have access to all these other people who come up to bat for you. Nah, don't worry about it. So doctors, come on, don't work over dietitians. It's okay to do it.
Umberto.
Gracias. So, I spent, I would say, all my life trying to promote ketogenic and low carb and stuff like that. But anyway, I try to be very objective in this way. So, could you guys tell us any exception when such a low quantity of carbs would be harmful? Maybe any pathological condition or something like that. Because of course I do know that we promote low carb, but not to be accused in wrong attitude to this topic, So, do you have any kind of exception? Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. Yes, there are a few. They're exceedingly, almost astronomically rare. They are the inborn errors of fatty metabolism. And there are a few people who can't eat the amount of fat that most people would eat on a ketogenic diet. They would have to do more of the Ted Naiman high protein, moderate, or even low fat diets, or they would get into trouble. Now, I almost made a YouTube video about this one time, but as I was doing the research, I realized I was only going to help about 500 people in the entire country, by doing the video, because these things are so rare. And so if anybody has one of those conditions, they have seen a geneticist very early in their life. They've seen pediatric endocrinology. They've had test after test after test. They know that they have this inborn error of fatty metabolism. And so it's not like somebody's going to reach adulthood and not know that they have that. You know you have that because you were a sickly baby. You went to every specialist. You may have been to the Mayo Clinic. You've been all over the country trying to find a doctor who can figure out what's wrong with you. And that happened when you were months old or days old or maybe a year or two old. And so you're well aware you have that condition. You know what to avoid and what not to eat. But for everybody sitting in this room, there is no grown, relatively healthy adult who cannot eat and prosper from the ketogenic way.
Would that be on PKU? Is that what
No, I don't. Phenylketonuria is not one of those diseases. Yeah, no. And just to follow up with that, we used to teach to not do keto in certain circumstances, and now the science is saying, well, actually, you should. So they're going to be, depending on when you read the textbook, it could be 5 years ago, and it says, don't use this in familial hyperchylomicronemia. Well, actually, you may benefit it because you're fixing the triglycerides from a different angle. So anyway, the science is progressing to the point, and that some of the things even 5 years ago where you couldn't do it, yes you can. But put it another way, I mean, all we're really doing is taking away sugar. Is there any human requirement to eat or drink sugar? No. So when you turn it around that way, and then you have to realize starches get digested to sugar in our stomachs, what's the harm? You know?
I suffered a widowmaker a little over a year ago. I was never on any medications. It's not due to health. It's not due to cholesterol levels. It was due to stress at the time. My levels look great. I did speak to my cardiologist. I know a lot. Fine to be doctor, right? If he was familiar with keto several months ago, and he said yes. And I said, "What do you think about not going on that?" He said, "Absolutely not." And I said, "Because of the fats and the cholesterol." He said, "Yes." Again, I don't have plaque in my arteries. I know, I was going to ask you, Dr. Berry, if you have mutual, your family practice, so you have a lot of mutual patients with cardiologists. So what kind of, are they very supportive of the cardiologist that you refer to?
So your heart attack may have been caused in part by stress, but it was absolutely caused, at least in part, by the inflammation and the chronic blood sugar spikes and insulin spikes. Although you weren't aware of that at the time, I'm sure you were also in the pressure cooker and that contributed. And so again, just like Doc said, would we caution someone like that? Oh, well, you need to continue eating poison then. Does that make sense? No. You need to eat the proper human diet, which is very, very low carb, either high protein, moderate fat, or high fat, moderate protein. Either way, I don't really care, whichever works best for you, but you need to get the poison out of your diet. And so the cardiologists that I try to use the most are at St. Thomas in Nashville. They're one of the top 10 cardiac hospitals in the country. Very good doctors there. And I have good friends, Dr. Olson and Dr. Gibson and Dr. Mansouri, who are there, who I refer to unless somebody just absolutely wants to go somewhere else. And they at first were weirded out by keto, as any cardiologist would be initially. And so Olson, I can never remember if he's from Iceland or Greenland. He's from one of those, great guy. But he called me, and we were talking about it. He's like, help me understand, what are you telling your patients again? To eat bacon? What? And so we had a chat, and I gave him some resources to look up, watch this video, read this study. And he was like, oh, okay, well, I don't really have a problem with that. And so none of the cardiologists that I work with advocate it, but the cardiologists at St. Thomas are okay with it. They're not going to try to tell my patients, hey, Barry's a nut job, stop doing that. They don't do that. That's right, yeah, they don't see any harm in it. And I think as any doctor continues to practice, having heard the bell of keto, whether he believes in it and recommends it or not, he's going to see patients just do better over the long term. And doctors are very aware of that. We look for outcomes. And it might not be a research study outcome, but he's going to be seeing you 25 years from now. You still be his patient because you're still alive, and go, she had that huge widowmaker, which, I mean, that's like 90% lethal when you have a complete blockage. It's a big deal. But yet you're still here. And you still look great, and you feel great. Does that make sense? And so doctors see that kind of stuff. And so it's only a matter of time until only the most hard-headed of doctors are going, yeah, keto's fine, don't worry about it. If that's what you want to do it.
Are you on a statin now?
I was for the first 6 months. My husband's here is a physician too. So bad.
Yay!
So I talked to the cardiologist and he said, well, he did have me on 2 milligrams and it's the lowest risk. Because I haven't been on it for a while. I haven't been on it for a long time.
Wow. You better resuscitate me.
You know, there's some areas in medicine where it's almost like you would fear like the risk of being on the edge of a cliff. Oh my God, I've never done this on a stage. Wow. This is dangerous. I mean, imagine you're on a cliff. A risk factor like cholesterol is nothing like that. It's nothing like that. And yet, so the more emotion that a doctor or a practitioner brings into persuasive thing, the less data there are. I mean, unless it's like you're at the hospital and you're sick and you need something urgently. If you're in the outpatient clinic and someone's like, oh, you need to, take that drug or do this or, time out. Can you please inform me what the risk is? And well, the guideline says you need. Well, tell me what the risk is. So, thankfully, there is a guideline now that doesn't even have LDL in it for the cholesterol. It's called cdriskcalculator.com. You put in the data there. I'll do that in the office to help people realize that it's more than just a number. And it's not like you're on the edge of a cliff. One time I heard Dr. Willett at Harvard say that, saturated fat is dangerous. And I'm like, no, this is dangerous, okay? How can someone like just... So we need to be more precise with the language, and you didn't hear the story is that her husband found her and resuscitated her after this life-threatening widowmaker arterial thing in the heart. So thanks for sharing your information.
I know you guys don't have the years of education, med school and residency and all that, and so you're just trying to get by and live your life and deal with your doctor, right? And so a good rule of thumb is anytime your doctor gets emotionally upset, that's a red flag that he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Okay? Because if I know for a fact, you're a type 2 diabetic, okay, you're like, yeah, and I'm going to go on the honey bun diet. And that's what I'm going to do, damn it. And what do you think about that, doctor? I'm going to be like, I'll see you in 3 months. I mean, if you want to do that, I'm not going to get emotional about that. I'm just like, all the research shows that you should not go on the honey bun diet. You should not do that. That's dumb. Please don't do that. But am I going to get angry at you? I'm like, that's dumb. I mean, why would... Okay, but it's going to hurt you. You understand that, right? And if you don't understand, there's a risk. I'm like, okay, I'll see you in 3 months. We'll see what you're able to see is. But if I'm going to get emotionally upset at you, that means that I'm riding on the long coattails of those authorities. That means I'm not really comfortable with the research in my own heart. Does that make sense? Because if I know that if you eat the honey bun diet, that's going to hurt you. I don't have to get upset about that. I don't have to proselytize. I don't have to convince you. Because I'm just like, that's dumb. Please don't do that. But if you're going to do it, okay, I still love you. I'll see you in 3 months. But anytime a doctor gets emotional about something like that, that means that he's standing on very unstable, logical, and research and knowledge ground. Does that make sense? Where to, Glenn?
I have a two-part question about kidneys, really fast. But my sister is 59, very petite, does yoga, nothing but water, takes care of herself. She started doing keto with me. She's been on it 6 or 7, 8 months. December, she had a size 6 kidney stone. The only thing that she'd been doing a lot of that I felt like was a lot of cauliflower stuff in her diet. So one of my questions is, in my mind, I think, is because she was flushing out all of the toxins and all of the inflammation in her body. But she's scared now. And so my question to you is there anything that you feel like could tweak her diet a little bit? They didn't test her, so we don't know if it was calcium oxalate or not. My second question is, for me, I've been carnivore since December 1st. I've never felt healthier, never felt better, no migraines or anything. I've heard you say on your chats that we didn't have to worry about proteins and stuff, and we're getting a lot of that out of carnivore. So that's my question about kidneys, and can you elaborate more on that?
So kidneys, the physiology and biochemistry that happens in the human kidney is borderline magical, what the human kidney does. It's also very, very complicated, and many doctors don't understand it well. And therefore, they're on the edge of the cliff again. They're scared because kidneys, I don't know. And so there's all this mythology about kidneys and about kidney stones and about kidney function. So let me be very clear about number one and number two, and you can disagree if you like, that's okay. But there is absolutely no research I can find that eating any amount of protein is harmful for your kidneys. There's no research that shows that it stresses your kidneys, that it damages your kidneys, that it lowers your kidney function. I can't find that research. I cannot find it, and I've looked. And that's one of the very first myths or lies. Also, in my early practice at the Berry Clinic, I kept having these patients say, "Oh, I can't eat too much protein because I have, kidney failure or whatever." And so I got to looking in it, and I thought, I don't even need to research into this. So the research has already been done. Huge study that shows that it's absolutely a myth. There's no truth to it whatsoever. It's a myth that just will not die in the medical community. That protein is bad for your kidneys. That protein harms or stresses. Complete myth, made up, no research to support that. You agree with that? Yeah. Secondly, kidney stones don't form overnight. Kidney stones take years to form, number one. Number two, kidney stones don't hurt at all until they move. Oh, he knows. Look at him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm right about that." And then they do hurt, right? And so that kidney stone was probably 12 millimeters and stuck up in one of her renal calyces for years, and she didn't even know she had it. Then with keto, and it's slowly getting smaller and smaller. When they get small enough, what can they do? Then they move, and then you pull the handicap rail off the bathroom wall because that's how bad they hurt. Anytime a woman tells you something's worse than childbirth, you better pay attention. And that's one of the two conditions that a woman has said that's worse than having a baby. That's bad. Okay, and so those two key concepts, and so I understand she's afraid because it happened to her. But keto didn't cause that kidney stone. Keto was slowly but surely making that smaller. It got small enough it could actually get into the calyces and into the ureter, then can pain worse than childbirth. Does that make sense?
Dr. Westman?
Thank you. So there is a study that over 10 days on a much too high caloric intake, the conditions were favorable for kidney stone formation with a keto diet. So long ago, never been followed up. They didn't actually see a stone, but it's like they didn't see a storm, but the conditions were favorable for a storm. But it's one of those things that I've seen it in my practice. I mean, I've seen a couple kind of, I'm on the edge. I don't know if it occurs more commonly than just natural humans and eating and drinking. If you have a history of kidney stones, I certainly amp up. I tell you to be sure to drink plenty of liquids and fluids. And in my area, there's a doctor an expert who recommends Euro 6K or potassium citrate as a supplement to prevent kidney stones. But actually, I'm going to do a quick straw poll. Remember when you were a child, you'd be asked to put your hand on the desk, close your eyes, and raise your hand for something? Did you ever do that in class? Because it's kind of a confidential thing. How many of you are doing a keto diet again? It was just about everyone, yeah. So now, put your head down, close your eyes, and if you've had a kidney stone... I didn't mean it that way, but if you had a kidney stone, raise your hand. And is it since, no, head down. Since you started a keto diet, have you had a kidney stone pass? Raise your hand. That was a much different response. And I can just, heads up now, open your eyes. The Democrats win. No, the Republicans win. No, it's not a big issue that I'm not going to go home and immediately tell people not to do this. But it was not zero. So that's kind of my experience. Yeah, in the microphone.
I am 61 today. It is my birthday. It's my birthday. Keto is actually.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday, dear Cindy. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, hey! You have made my day. Keto has literally saved my life from all the health problems that I've had the last year. My question is there any reason I can't plan on eating this for the next 40 years? After 100, I'll give it up, but until then, so 40 years.
Where are you from?
Boaz, Alabama.
You got that accent. I can say that. Right.
Yeah.
No, do it. Do it forever and ever and ever. And just keep doing it. How long have you been here? 8 months. See, you were just on the home beginning. You've got so many benefits that you're going to see if you just keep going and keep going and keep going. He can't stand it. He just wants to grab this microphone so bad.
I'm from 80 units of insulin down to 0. And I
So, you guys know I love to flip language and to make questions a different way. So you're asking me, should there come a point as you get older that you should reintroduce the poison back into your system? That's you see my point. That's what that question means. Ultimately for you, is at what point should I start poisoning myself again? Should I do that? Is it better for elderly people to poison themselves? I know. You guys see my point? That's really what the question is. Is there ever a time when it's okay to poison myself again? No. Why would you want to? Why would you want to? Why would you do that? You feel great, you look great, you're off how many medicines?
I'm on 14 prescription medicines, a CPAP, 2 inhalers, and 80 units of insulin a day.
How much are you spending a month on medication?
I was spending well over $400 a month.
Yeah. So I would recommend you never start to poison yourself again.
I just like to point out, people think I'm the one who's dramatic in this relationship, but clearly it is him. Dr. Westman again, do you have something to say?
Yeah, pass the microphone, please. The science is at the point where middle-aged mice put on a keto diet live 13% longer. I hope the next study will be, let's do it from birth, although they have different metabolism. But no, this is a healthy way of eating. In fact, in front of Mark Sisson, and has anyone heard of Mark Sisson? And Rob Wolf, I asked them just last week, I've helped someone lose 100 pounds, 150 pounds, 200 pounds, they've come off all these medicines, they've not had CPAP, all this. Why should I ask them to add carbs back? I didn't say poison, gosh. And there was a little bit of dancing, a little tiptoeing around. They didn't have any science to say, of course, because nobody knows for sure. But they, well, of course, you want to add back because people do that, and all that. Well, I'm not so sure anymore. So, thank you for your testimonial.
Considering the new Canadian food guidelines that have recently come out, and the fact that the U.S. is going to put out theirs in 2020. The worry, the concern that we should have, what can we do to be influencers? I work for one of the largest health insurance companies, and so I see the way the government influences what I'm supposed to do at work.
So the guidelines, but and you guys are sitting there thinking, well, I don't give a damn what the guidelines say. I'm going to eat keto, and they can just mine, right? But here's the problem: is everybody who's in a hospital, they have to eat by the guidelines, or the hospital will lose their funding. Everybody who's in preschool or kindergarten or elementary, middle school, high school, they have to feed them the guidelines, or they will lose their medical funding. True story, where Neisha went to school in junior high, a little sweet little community junior high, like what was it, K through 8. They had some cafeteria ladies, great women, wonderful women, and they hated feeding the kids that crap. And so they would actually cook real food to feed the kids. And I don't know what they did with the stuff that Cisco brought, but I mean, they tried to make real meals for the children instead of feeding them that crap. And the school was threatened. You'll lose your funding if you don't feed the guidelines to these kids. And so they had to stop cooking real food for the children. That's a true story. And I know the women personally, and I know it's true because we have kids who went there. But the guidelines are I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I pray for Nina Teichholz and that what they're trying to do, the Nutrition Coalition, every day, but I don't even know where that's going to start. I don't know. Where do you, it's this never-ending wheel of lobbyists and legislation and regulations. And where do you stick the crowbar into that wheel to try to break that cycle? I don't know. The big insurance companies, I don't know. I don't even know. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on helping y'all, and then y'all going to focus on helping somebody else. And eventually, we're going to be the majority. And then what I predict is the guidelines will just kind of go away. I don't know how you affect those guidelines, and I applaud Nina for what she's doing, but I don't even know. Like, that makes me just want to go jump off the bridge, thinking, how am I going to change that? Because you know what I'm talking about, the politics. Anything to add to that?
The nutritioncoalition.org, Nina Teichholz, who wrote the book, The Big Fat Surprise, every time I see her every year, she says, I really don't want to do this anymore, but so many people are dying. I mean, she didn't really want to do anything past writing her book, and so she's hooked because she sees the potential benefit. But you can become a member and support the Nutrition Coalition, and they've already shown change in getting the guideline to at least have the evidence-based principle behind it. But the lobbyists are in charge of getting people on the guideline. I mean, they're influencing the guideline choices, and it's basically the processed food industry that's winning with the guidelines. So sadly, thanks for that question.
So they've got billions of dollars on their side, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have 1 billion people on my side, and then we'll see who wins.
Thank you so much to the doctors. Okay, if the doctors could come join us here in the front of the stage, please. And then if you guys just stay in your seat right now, and when Glenn comes up on the stage, and he'll explain what we need to do. Hold on one second.
So obviously